Welcome to Exit Like a Boss. I'm going to show you, having helped nearly 800 business owners work through a 21-step process to exit like a boss, how you can do it, what you need to know, the steps you need to take, and what's actually involved in you and your business being able to maximize value and successfully exit like a boss. Hope you enjoy it. In this episode of Exit Like a Boss, we're going to talk about another aspect of life after business, after we've exited like a boss, and that's about asset protection. Now, we talked about this way back in session 4 and 5, unplanned events and financial planning, making sure we had our act together. If something went wrong, how do we protect the assets? And that's fine, and we definitely needed to do that. Now we're talking about a different problem. Typically now, we're a baby boomer, or we're now 50, 60, 70 years old. We've sold our business. We've received our $5 million payout or whatever the number is. Now we've got a different problem. We've got to protect that asset. We're not going to earn any more money other than investments, which we've already spoken about. But we can't go and resell another business for another $5 million if we bugger it up or we lose it or something goes wrong. So how do we make sure we've got our assets protected? We've also got some added complexity. Lots of us have blended families. We might have had kids from a previous marriage, or we've got kids that have themselves been married and are now divorced, but they might have kids to that previous spouse. So it becomes quite a complicated tale. And again, the answer here is simply get the right advice. This is not an area I can tell you exactly what to do. I can tell you what you need to have in place, and that is an asset protection strategy. Make sure you know what assets you own, what assets are owned by entities you control or manage, what assets might be in super or retirement fund or a 401k or whatever it might be, depending on where you live. And how they're actually protected is also an important part of the equation. In Australia, we use a family trust as a really strong asset protection vehicle where the assets are managed or controlled, if you like, by the family, but they're not actually owned by the family. They're held in trust for the benefit of the family. And that provides a significant level of asset protection. But that's not all you need. You need a lot more than that. So starting to think about, firstly, what assets have we now got? Assumedly, we've sold the business. We might have kept the factory or the office. What happens if there's an issue? What happens if there's a fire at the factory? Or what happens if the new business owner sues us because the factory needs an electrical upgrade and we didn't tell him, or something goes on that's going to affect those assets? We've now got different risk profile. So we need to start to think about, how do I protect those assets that I've got? What assets have I got personally? Assumedly, there's a bank account somewhere with $5 million in it, or maybe it's now listed in stocks or shares or managed funds. Maybe it's in some other asset. You might have bought a property with it, or whatever that might be. Thinking about who owns those assets, how are they protected? What documents do I have? What insurances do I have that can protect some of that risk? Not all of it, but can protect some of it by having the right insurance in place to make sure if something goes wrong, if something happens, if there's an accident, if there's a serious event, a fire, whatever, then those assets are still protected is a really critical outcome here. As I said at the start, you can't go back and resell the business to get another $5 million. You've already done that. So assumedly, that's the last money you're going to earn other than investments. Therefore, how do I protect it? How do I make sure that my family's well protected? How do I make sure that I've got a strategy in place to make sure that asset is not at risk? Because I'm assuming for most of us, if we lose that asset, we've got a very big problem in terms of funding retirement. So we have to make sure it's protected. Again, we get good advice, legal agreements. We're going to talk about estate planning in a moment, which is part of this, but also understanding what mechanisms we can put in place. And the main part of that is who owns what entities or structures or, trusts, superannuation, what else can we use to actually protect those assets? Given that we've now retired, we're not going to earn any more money. We want to make sure that asset's there for our use and benefit for the foreseeable future and for our family, obviously. So maybe a family trust, maybe some other structure. But again, get detailed advice before you sell the business. If you're going to keep the factory, for example, who should own it after you sell? Who's the lease going to be with the owner? What name should that be in? Those sort of questions are quite important to get this right and make sure you don't muck up. Having exited like a boss, don't muck it up by not getting the asset protection right.